So let's get into this definition of blended learning. Our friends at the Christensen Institute have spent a long time cataloging about 100 different examples of blended learning all across the country. And I think this is helpful to have sort of some common language. They have a definition that we're going to start with, which is really broken down into 3 essential parts. Let's dive into that definition.
So the first part of this definition is actually pretty straightforward. It basically means that students are learning online. But the critical part is this part here in the end of the definition. The really big idea here is especially on the path and pace piece of this, which says that students don't all learn at the same pace. Sometimes you might be able to whiz through something and really understand it quickly. Other times you might need longer to play with a concept until it really settles in, or you might need totally different pathways to be able to master something.
This second part is very straightforward. It essentially means that this online learning is actually happening in real school settings. So this last part is important because what it means is what's happening online isn't entirely disconnected from what's happening in the classroom.
So this is an important point. It means that you can't just stick someone on Oregon Trail or Reader Rabbit to babysit them in effect, that what they're doing in that online experience is actually informing what's happening in the classroom.
Exactly. The classroom needs to talk online, and online needs to talk to the classroom. And in the ideal setting, the data from each part, whether it's teacher observations or actual outcomes, should inform the other piece of the puzzle so that the two become an integrated whole. So here are 3 examples of practices that might be considered blended learning. Read through them and decide what you think, and then we'll come back and evaluate them together. So let's take a look at these examples and talk about whether they are or are not blended learning. Example 1 is students responding to a teacher. It's great that they're using a tablet. It might be more efficient, but this is just technology being put into the classroom. It's the old system done digitally. Not blended.
This second example is blended learning, and the reason is it's actually using a method called the flipped classroom. It's basically shifting the instruction online out of school time so that students have control over the time and the pace of what they're learning. They can press pause, rewind, go back over a concept that they didn't quite understand, and then they get to use the time in classroom to really dive deep into the actual concepts of the trial to extract far more meaning out of this experience.
And this is an important idea that we hope with blended learning, we might be able to make education a little more efficient and free up some time for some, quote, deeper learning type activities. And it's clear that an example like this, where the students get to do a simulation, is probably going to be a more powerful learning experience. And that was enabled by the teacher using technology to gain some time. It's great that this teacher is using a digital whiteboard. It's great that the students are taking notes on their laptops. I would argue all those are good efficiency gains, but again, just tools in the classroom. We're not changing the fundamental role of the teacher or the student. We're not going after more personalized education. This is technology making the old system better. But in our definition, it's not blended learning.
So we hope out of this exercise you're really starting to get a feel for what really is blended learning and what's just what we call tech-rich classrooms, just layering technology without actually changing the learning model itself.
That's great. And I think now we have to think about what is high-quality blended learning. It's not just blended, it's actually the definition that we're looking to promote in this course.
Yeah, this is a good point because the definition of blended learning purposely leaves out any notion of blended learning being always good or always bad. In fact, you can look at a lot of programs that would meet that definition, and sometimes they're really great and sometimes they're not that great at all. So a really interesting question is, what would high quality blended learning, what would that definition be? Because it's not agreed to in the field right now.
Okay, so let's tackle that as our challenge. I'll put out there a straw man to begin with. Let's look at a high quality blended learning definition that is broken down into 4 different parts. The first part of our definition is that it should be personalized. And by that we mean it goes after the needs, the gaps for every student, not the class as a whole. It's personalized for each learner.
The second part of this definition is that it's mastery-based. It basically means that students move on and receive credit only after they've mastered a core concept.
And the correlate to that is that students can go after demonstrating mastery whenever they're ready. They don't have to wait till the teacher says, we're at week 7, now's the time to test out. Third key element is that it's based on high expectations for students, which means that each student has clearly defined, rigorous standards that prepare them for success in college and career.
And the fourth and last element of this definition is that there's student ownership, and this is critical. Student ownership means that students are empowered with the skills, information, and tools that they need to manage their own learning.
One of the core beliefs about blended learning is students can own their own learning. And just from an educational standpoint, we want kids to be able to do things without the teacher telling them what to do. I mean, that's just basic what it means to be educated, what it means to be a learner, and I think folks get that. But if you look at college success rates, we have lots of students who succeed. They get to college and it's just a cliff. And oftentimes what we hear is, when I was in control of my schedule, when I was in control of my education, when there's no one there telling me to go to class, things got really, really hard. So we really want kids to be learners for the sake of being learners. But if we really value kids going to higher education institutions and being really successful in life beyond that, we've got to figure out how to better prepare students for that. And I think blended learning is a big piece of that answer.